Hi.
Hi.
Some technical difficulties, but we're here. So, I wanted to start today by just talking a little bit about this broadcast itself, because I had some nerves come up today, and we did this back in the fall, and I really loved our conversation. And afterwards, I watched it, and I saw just how in my head I was, how much I was in teacher mode, and there just wasn't. There was bits and pieces of where I was showing up as myself, and there were bits and pieces where I was in teacher mode. And I talk a lot about authenticity and vulnerability, and so I want to bring. My intention is to bring that into this conversation. And ironically, me telling myself that of I want to show up more myself, and that was just putting another layer of pressure on myself of
How do I do that?
The exact same thing but in a different way. So in the fall there was a lot of me what do I want to say, how do I want to say it, in my head trying to think about it, blah blah blah. And now it's just in a different way of what I want to say, how do I want to say it. It's there's just so much pressure that I can tend to put on myself, and I think there's a lesson in that of I don't have to try so hard. We all I think a lot of us can learn from that of we don't have to try so hard. I can be messy and vulnerable, and I can also just be in my head if I want, if that's what's coming through. But I think what's important is that we're both present with each other and just to have a conversation. I actually had a really good cry 15 minutes ago. I listened to some music because I just felt this tension in my chest of that nervousness, and I wanted to release some of that, and so I did, and I feel better, but I still feel a little nervous.
So what's the expectation? Where's the I don't know the word for that. What's the fear coming from?
I don't know. Of course I thought about that too, and when I was reflecting on it and had some tears come, I got the sense that there was this little boy inside me of I don't want them to laugh at me, I don't want them to make fun of me, which so many bigger parts of myself can say that's not gonna happen, and if it does, we're gonna take care of ourselves, it's gonna be okay. But so often we can have these arguments back and forth about what's real and what's not, and fear is an illusion, but at the time of feeling the fear, it feels very real.
Yeah.
And I had a wounded child moment of just being afraid of what people might say. I don't know. But I wanted to acknowledge that and not dismiss it and shove it away shut up little kid, you're crazy sort of thing. That doesn't do any good.
I think there's a thing to be said about what it takes to just show up as yourself in any situation, right? Because there's so many times in the world where there is some sort of a label that we can put on, or that is put upon us to exist as something, whether that is I'm supposed to show up as an employee, and this is what my title is, or I am somebody's son or somebody's friend or whatever. But it is a completely different ball game whenever we have to just show up as ourselves, because there is no structure to that. There is no hey, this is what I'm supposed to do, supposed to be, supposed to have, supposed to whatever, and it's just come as you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally just saw a meme I don't know, 20 minutes ago, and it was two people on a bus, and there's one person looking outside the bus window like this, and they're all sad, and it says I'm not who I used to be, and they're all depressed about it. And on the other side, it's a person looking out the window at a sunset, and they're like all excited, and it says I'm not who I used to be. And it is, it's that place of whenever you're able to just show up as who you are, like, and that used to be terrifying to me. Like, making friends used to be really tough for me because I didn't know who that person was.
Yeah.
I was always an extension of somebody else. But today, just getting to show up as myself is really great. Like, he knows this, but you all don't know this, that I had a job interview like a little over an hour ago, and all I had to do is show up as myself because I know that I was completely qualified for that position, and so all I had to do was like go show them who I am, and I know who that person is. I've done a lot of work to figure out what that looks like. So, yeah, there wasn't any apprehension, there wasn't any fear. I was just like, here I am.
Yeah, which is so cool, and I wished him luck before he left, and that's what he said is like, I don't really need luck because I'm just going to show up as I am.
Yeah.
That's such a great lesson, and something that being in a relationship with someone like him is so great because we can all learn a lot from that. Because I think if I were going into a job interview, there would be a heavy layer of that, but there would also be this doubt of like, do I need to say the right thing in order to get this job, or like say things a certain way, act a certain way, kind of thing. Even though I know deep down that I can just show up as myself, and if they wouldn't want me, that doesn't reflect anything on me.
Right.
It just means it's not a good match.
Yeah.
And they can translate that to friendship conversations, dating conversations, all of that. So yeah, that was a really cool moment before you left. Like, wow, that's really cool. That you don't have to be nervous about something; you can just be yourself.
Anything, not just something, anything.
Yeah.
It's, and so much of this is like the mindset that I try to put myself in going into any situation, especially a new situation, because the idea of all I have to do is go and share of myself, right? Like that's like life for me on the good days. I can't always do that because I'm a human being, so I'm not always in that space, but and that's removing the outcome or the goal of the outcome piece for me. Is like, if my mindset was I'm going to go in there today, I'm going to get this job, like that would have steered me in one certain direction that would have not been authentic for me at all. But same thing with a relationship. I don't have an agenda going into most situations. Like I try not to anyway, because if I'm focused on the outcome, I'm gonna miss all the beautiful stuff in that process, And it's me grasping at control and thinking what I know is best, and that removes all the option and all the possibility for all the magic that might happen along the way, with everything, friendships, any sort of relationship whatsoever, or even situations that I put myself in, I think about all the time that all the opportunities that I missed, or all of the chances that I didn't take because I was afraid that I might fail, and I just don't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore because it's worth the ride.
Fun.
Absolutely.
Like our relationship started that way. We met on a dating app, so obviously there's kind of an inherent, like, there's romantic possibilities there, but like we just started connecting and we were both open to whatever. And we're still kind of open to whatever.
Yeah. Except for Facebook Lives.
And it's just more fun to play that way without being attached to like, this has to look like, regardless of what I think I want out of this, like thinking that, oh God, if he doesn't exactly align with what I'm thinking of where this is going, then this isn't going to work, sort of thing. There can be different layers to a relationship, but when you can find someone like you, where we can have literally every aspect of a relationship together, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think we have that foundation. I mean, I had a foundational relationship with myself that gave me the opportunity to, like, to date somebody else, to look at a dating profile and read all the stuff that you had written and be like, holy shit, this is like the real deal. Like, this is a person who like fucking gets it. And that's scary, but like scary in a good way, you know. And throwing caution to the wind and going to this person's house and just doing the thing, you know. And now our relationship gives me that foundation, even like another layer of foundation to be able to do that with other things in my life, to know that, you know, no matter what, at least right now, I have this to come back to. So there's just more foundation, there's more support underneath of me to take even bigger chances if I want to. And to do things together, you know, to take chances together, which is really fun as well.
And see what works and doesn't work for ourselves.
Yeah.
As a couple and for ourselves as individuals.
Right. Absolutely.
We've been talking a lot about like how for both of us, there's a plane flying overhead, so plane needs to hear us. How this relationship has shown each of us as individuals what's possible to have in a relationship, not just romantically, but other ways too. And how that has maybe made some other relationships challenging for both of us, because it shows us where we may have been maybe settling, or just maybe not even realizing that the relationships could be better. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. There's a person on Instagram that we both follow, at Sup Daily. So, you know, his name is Chris Thompson is his name, but at Sup, SUPDAILY is his handle on Instagram and everywhere. And he talks a lot about personal growth and self-improvement, and those types of things, and how he's gone through therapy, and talks about how dating is really hard after you know yourself so well and you realize what you're worth, and whenever most of the world isn't doing that same amount of work, how that can feel really isolating. And you know, for me, I spent a long time, I was never a person who was afraid of talking about the challenges I had or the places where I thought I had opportunities for growth. Instead, for me, I was always the most terrified to talk about things that brought me immense joy. That felt like, I don't know, I held all that really close to my chest, and I forgot where I was going with that altogether.
Where has that shifted for you?
Yeah. So some of that is, you know, I used to be afraid that other people would have negative feelings about the things that I really, really love. You know, if that was the case, like, oh my God, I must be an idiot or stupid, or I'm not allowed to like these things, I shouldn't do that, right? And so that's not really a thing for me anymore. So that balance of knowing myself enough and knowing what to share, when to share, and what not to share with certain people in my life. Like I had a conversation, we had a conversation recently about the same job interview I just did. There was the company, after I finished the phone interview with the president of this company, I was really, really excited about it, and just like gushing to you about, like, I'm so excited for all of these various reasons. And then I was talking with somebody else immediately after, like maybe 10 minutes after our discussion, and I put a cap on that joy because the person that I was talking to isn't a person who usually is able, isn't usually able to have that same level of joy or excitement for me like you do. And some of that's a self-preservation for me, and protecting my own energy, because this individual isn't a person who can really celebrate those victories with me like you do, or like a lot of people. And there are times when, you know, knowing what's available to me energy-wise with the relationship that I have with you and other people in my life as well that are positive, because we've done the work and we don't need those people in our life, but whenever we find them, it is such a joy to meet other people that are like us. That now that I see what's possible and what could happen, the situations and the energy and the people in my life that don't have that feel so much less.
Yeah.
And that's not a judgment on them, and that's not saying that they're bad people or they need to change or anything like that. It's just my involvement in those relationships has now changed because I think of it kind of like a bank account, right? So if I'm constantly if people are constantly debiting from a bank account, right, I'm not going to continue to give them money because there's no sharing that's happening, right? And instead, when I enter a relationship like this where both partners are contributing and debiting as necessary, debiting and crediting as necessary.
Took accounting in high school. I still remember that.
Yeah. But also like giving interest and sharing, and you know what I mean? It's just a completely different situation.
Yeah. And it increases the satisfaction.
Yeah.
Versus it being honestly a relationship that can be draining.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had some recent experiences similar in nature, and I'm actually planning to share a post tomorrow around like everything you said, and it's also really hard for me to watch people suffer when I know they're suffering, and I have to keep reminding myself that everybody's on their own journey, and I was certainly suffering for 15 years, and if somebody like me had seen the version of me 5 years ago, you know, probably would feel kind of feel shitty about that, but like at the same time I wouldn't trade those, like I wouldn't shorten those 15 years if I could, because I believe that the full 15 years is what has led to where I'm at now. That being said, it's still hard for me to watch people suffer when I know what's possible for them. Like there's different profiles you can, different things you can do, but there's what's called a leadership lens, and what mine is I can see what's possible for someone, like 9-10 steps ahead of where they are now, and I kind of take that for granted sometimes. It's almost like at times I wish I could turn off my observational skills with people, because it takes me out of the present moment when I see what's possible for someone and they're not actually going for that. So it can be hard to watch somebody suffer when I know that it doesn't have to be that way.
I'm going to challenge you on one aspect of that.
Okay.
But that is, and we talk about this a lot, you and I, but the word suffer has an inherent value or judgment associated with it. And, you know, something that I have learned from my own past is like thinking that people are unhappy with their lives because, like you, I can also see, like, if you would just do these things, like, life would be easier. You know, like all those times that you're crying, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
But they might not feel as though that's suffering, right? And so those are situations that I have to navigate very carefully.
Yeah.
To see, am I able to be in a relationship with this person, free from judgment of whatever they're doing, whatever choices that whatever choices they make, free from the idea of what you just said, of like, oh, this person is suffering, because I know that I wouldn't want to be pitied.
Yeah.
You know, if anybody is like looking at me with pity, like I don't need that energy in my life either, you know? And oftentimes those types of people feed off of things like pity, right? Because that is it's a type of energetic reception that isn't, in my opinion, isn't positive. But
yeah, I will say that just to clarify, I do think I was in a place where I thought there was people that I thought maybe were suffering or settling. I viewed settling as a form of suffering.
Yeah.
And I've since kind of let go of that judgment. Where I'm coming from now with the place of suffering is like when people are actively complaining about their life, like saying that this, my life is so hard, my relationships suck, all these things like that. To me, it sounds like suffering to me. That being said, there is a layer of truth to that, because again, if I go back to where I was 5 years ago, yeah, I was, in a lot of pain and, kind of, I would journal through my problems and stuff and like, oh my God, my life sucks so bad. But I wasn't actually taking steps to change it also. So in a way, I was okay with suffering too.
Yeah.
Like, was I really suffering if I was accepting that that's how things were?
Yeah, there's a person in my life who, usually whenever we're together, it's just a lot of unloading.
Yeah.
Of like, here's all the things that are going wrong. And, I asked a hard question of this person one time, and the way that they responded, because I asked the question just out of concern. So I was like, "Are you okay?" Essentially, and not a judgment. I just asked a question like that, and the response that I got was like, just very cold. So like clearly this person doesn't want a solution, and not that I was offering a solution. I was just checking in to make sure that this person was okay. And that's just not the type of relationships that I want today, like you can pay money to tell somebody all of your problems. That's not a relationship that I want to have. I mean, unless you want to pay me, maybe.
At least not when it's all the time, right?
Right.
Like there's a give and take in friendships, and my closest and favorite friendships are where it's not all pie in the sky, all positive all the time, but there's a balance of when one of us is coming to the other with like, man, I'm going through a really tough time, and here's what's going on, and then the next, it's not the same person every time coming to the table with problems.
Hang on, you have a bug in your shoulder.
And so for that reason, and going back to kind of what I was saying before, is like I can see my true inner circle of people where I can just be fully myself, not only with sharing the challenges in my life, but also the joys for the reasons you've said. Like that inner circle continues to get smaller in my life, and that's fine. That's okay. It's more than okay, because then the more, the tighter that circle is, the more I can focus my energy on the relationships that really light me up. And I don't have to expend as much energy on the relationships that don't quite fit that level of satisfaction.
Yeah. Some of what's been uncomfortable with a lot of the other relationships in my life has been, I have flipped the script in some of those, whereas I was trying to get more from those relationships than I was actually getting, and kind of forcing that aspect of the relationship a little bit more. Now that I have that in various other places, like our relationship, I have stepped back from some of those relationships a little bit, because I don't need that there. I wasn't getting that there to begin with. And that makes people uncomfortable. Humans are creatures of habit, and so as soon as the habit starts to change, people are like, what's going on? What are you doing? Where are you going? Come back.
Yeah. When there's a history in the relationship, people get used to it being a certain way, and when that changes, it can be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Anything else on that?
Nope.
Thought we could also chat just a little bit about monogamy and open relationship and kind of where we're at. I had to laugh because I realized, so it was sometime in the fall when I shared the post of you and the other 3 guys that I was exploring relationships with. And very shortly after that post is when things just kind of naturally went monogamous between me and you.
Yeah.
And then last week, I shared a post about how that's been the case, how we've been kind of natural, without labeling it as monogamy, that's just kind of naturally what's happened. And then less than a week later, so last night, I had sexual emotional encounter with somebody else. And so it's just funny how I put things out there of like, this is kind of where our relationship at is. Shortly after that, things shift a little bit. That being said, I do think the monogamous trend will probably continue, at least on my part, for the time being. It's this relationship, similar to what I was sharing before, is just where I want to focus the most energy. And I'm certainly open to other possibilities along the way. I expect this to continue to be fluid because, again, that's what makes it fun and exciting and like opens both of us up to possibilities and what all's out there. But that's just kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people hear, oh, I hate this, but like what you just said, the terms of like fun and is it interesting, fun and interesting and whatever, like doesn't necessarily. That doesn't have to mean anything physical or sexual at all, you know? I think that's like the bad rep that open relationships have. And like for some people, like that is what that means, and that's totally fine for them. But just like anything else, there is no one relationship that is the mold for every other relationship. That isn't a thing that exists. And I think once you start to put that on the table, that is when like, okay, humans don't just exist in a vacuum, right?
Right.
So neither should their relationships. And yeah, I mean, we had that conversation on date one of what do you think about this? And I was like, let's get weird. That has been my phrase for us for a very long time. Is let's get weird. You know, let's make mistakes. Let's do some stupid stuff. Whatever. But yeah, I don't see that changing anytime soon. I mean, at the end of the day, I want you to be happy. You know, that doesn't mean that I'm going to. That's not like I want you to be happy, even though I am fill in the blank. Like that's not healthy either. You know, like your happiness is the most important thing to me. Like, no. My happiness is the most important thing to me. If you also happen to be happy as well, hooray! Because that's your job. That's not my job, right? And I feel the exact same way. I love the. God, we're back to the word freedom again. I don't like that word. Or the opportunity. I don't like that word either because it feels a lot more active than it actually is.
Fluidity.
Yeah, even that's sexually charged. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. But I like that our relationship does not limit the other relationships in my life. Boom! Got there. That's how I feel about it, you know? I love connecting with other people in lots of different ways. Honestly, for me, that's not usually sexually. Sometimes it can be. I have one person in my life that Ted knows all about, that every time I see them, I'm like, oh, I just want to connect with you sexually. And that has yet to happen. But yeah, like I don't want there to be limits in my life, like hardly anywhere, which as a Capricorn is very un-Capricorn.
Scarcity versus abundance.
Yeah.
Just because I'm having a relationship or experience with somebody else does not take anything away from our relationship.
Yeah. I love the whole thing about like happiness is like candlelight. If you were to light somebody else's candle, yours is not any dimmer. Like that's kind of how I want my life to be, you know? I'm going to share this with you. That doesn't change. I almost said our relationship candle, and that makes me want to throw up in my mouth.
Gross. So, I also wanted to talk a little bit about, like, just because we have an open relationship, I don't think that's necessarily the, like, end-all be-all, or that's the highest level solution for everybody. Monogamy works great for people, too.
Yeah.
My advice or my thoughts around that is, like, just maybe considering why things are monogamous or why things are open. Like, you know, there can be an unhealthy piece to the open relationship too, of like, I'm not getting my needs met here, so I need to explore elsewhere. Like, if that's the case, then there needs to be something explored here.
Yeah.
And if monogamy is the case because I don't trust my partner to, like,
There's a bigger issue there.
like, yeah, it's not about what type of relationship you have. It's maybe the underlying reasons why that's the case of what, and then going from there in terms of what works for you.
Yeah. And we have no business judging anybody else's relationship, just like they don't have any business judging ours. So we can't say this is what you should do because we're not a part of that relationship. We have absolutely no place to make those decisions for anybody else, right? And not have an opinion about any of it. So
you find what works for you that feels good and feels right to you, and that's not just with relationships but everything else.
correct.
I don't think I have anything else. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about?
No, I think that people overcomplicate that, and they often have a lot of questions around that, and that's, I don't know, that's my thing, is like, don't limit yourself and don't judge other people or yourself. Like, ta-da. People let sex be a messy thing, and it doesn't have to be a messy thing. But it can be very
If it's
messy.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like there's a lot of topics that can be really uncomfortable for people. Sex, money, religion, politics. Like, there are things that the topic comes up and people have visceral reactions to because it's an uncomfortable topic and it's not something you want to explore.
And I want to know why. Like,
Yeah,
why is that a thing? I was raised in a home where, like, all of that stuff, like, free game, let's talk about it, and so I'm like, I was raised in a very sex positive household, so I don't know any of that stuff. Like,
I was not.
no, I know you weren't.
And that comes from, generations of, religious shame around sex, not just homosexuality, but any kind of sex. It just was not talked about. So very different experiences.
Yeah.
And part of me wonders if my upbringing has something to do with, like, my, enjoyment of sexual freedom now. But whatever.
Yeah. Just be a person. Back to what you said at the beginning of, my mind just went blank, of,
Being yourself? What do you mean?
yeah, I don't remember now.
Coming as you are.
Yeah. Oh, overcomplicating things. Don't stop making it so hard.
Yeah. You don't have to try so hard.
You have to try so hard.
Yeah.
Like, just be yourself. It's okay.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel like it's okay to be where you are because of your surroundings, find someplace else.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. There's, like, so again, if I look at 5 years ago, like, dear God, was I trying really hard in that relationship, and I think that played a huge role in why things were so complicated. And now I talk a lot about how our relationship is effortless, and it's not because we don't put in work, but it's because we've put in so much work into ourselves as individuals that now we can, reap the reward of having a relatively effortless relationship. And I'm finding that in other areas as well, sex being one of them. Money is the big topic of the day that I'm writing it's a large concentration of my second book. That's been a challenge of mine for a while, where I have been trying really hard, and when I can step into that place of not trying so hard, that's when money becomes easier.
Yeah.
So there's so many areas of our lives where, like, wherever you're having the biggest challenge, there's an opportunity to look at why that is. And when you can get to a place of not trying so hard, that's when things really start to flow and get fun.
Yeah. For us, sometimes, and this is just a funny, stupid thing, but sometimes we are so putting so much into this relationship that it backfires slightly, and this is what I mean by that. So, For those of you out there that don't know, Ted has a cat named Joey, who is 17 years old, and for a while he was deciding to pee in random spots in the house. And so there are certain rooms that we keep closed off so that he doesn't go and pee on a rug. So there was one day last week or the week before that Ted told me, "Hey Tyler, just so you know, we don't have to keep this bathroom door closed." And I said, "Oh, I was only closing it because I thought you had closed it because you didn't want Joey to go in there." And then he said, "Oh no, I was closing it because I thought that you wanted to keep this door closed." And so we had just been doing this thing because we thought the other person was wanting that to happen. It's just a stupid thing.
So funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you think our relationship isn't great?
Ooh.
Or that it could be better?
I don't even know if I have an answer to that.
I don't think I do either.
We have a really good balance.
Our communication is really great, and part of that is just our communication styles. I lean towards over communicating because I've learned I get so happy. So a really good friend of mine has she has a whole like spreadsheet workbook for her wedding plan that she's putting together. I'm officiating their wedding in the fall, and we had dinner the other night. She had some very, very specific questions about like what binder I have for like my script that I'm going to be using for wedding day. I just was like grinning from ear to ear because I was seeing myself in the mirror, you know, of like how detailed I am with things. The Halloween party last year being a great story of that. My list of things to do, I have things down to like the 15-minute increments the day of what we do. Probably not necessary, but at the same time, I've found a lot of joy in that because it makes things go a lot more smoothly. But my point in sharing that is like both of us are really effective communicators, and that is helpful not only in the day-to-day life of like, you know, whoever took out the trash sort of thing, but also in the much deeper areas of our relationship where things could possibly become a problem if we weren't communicating about things effectively as they're coming out.
Yeah. I'm still trying to think of a place where...
Yeah, no, I don't think that either. The only things that come to mind are where like I can be working on myself, but I feel like I show up in this relationship in a way that I'm very pleased with, and there's nothing I would change about how I show up with you. There's just opportunities that I have for myself. But we were playing Let's Get Deep is a card game that you can buy and kind of ask intimate questions of your partner or a friend. And one of the questions was, what is your favorite part about your life? Something like that. And my answer was our relationship.
I think mine was too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I love you too.
I feel complete on this. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Well, I hope you enjoyed. I don't know if people have been commenting, but if you have questions about anything we've said, just drop them in the comments.
Can I ask questions?
To address